And welcome to this episode of the Capitalized Life and Retirement Show. I'm your host, Matthew Johnson, president and owner of Johnson Wealth and Income Management, a retirement income source located in Clear Lake and Humboldt, Iowa, serving clients in northern Iowa and southern Minnesota. Well, how are you today? Hope you're doing well. Today, we're going to have a little bit of fun. It's the end of the year, and my staff has kind of collected over the course of the last few months a number of questions that we're going to go through. And these are things that hopefully are maybe a little bit fun, a little bit educational, maybe a little challenging to me. I don't know. I haven't read the questions just yet. But as we go through this, I hope that this kind of maybe challenges you. If you've been thinking about asking a question and maybe you feel a little embarrassed about asking the question, maybe you just don't feel like you've got the resource or the individuals around you to answer the question competently, I want to encourage you, go to our website, johnsonwim.com, and submit a question. And who knows, we might put your question on the radio show. And I know that we've got at least 8 different individuals. Hopefully we get through all 8 of the questions. So let's get right to it. So our first question is submitted by Sarah from Des Moines. And here's what Sarah writes. She said, I just started my first job with a company that offers a 401k and a company match. I'm a little overwhelmed by all of the options. How much should I be contributing to start? And what's the most important thing that I need to know about getting the company match? Well, Sarah, first of all, congratulations for getting a job that has an opportunity for you to be able to contribute to a 401k. I think that that's a very important benefit that employers provide. I'm glad to hear that you've got it. But now it's time to really experience what most every employee has had to experience. So that is, number one, there seems to be an overwhelming number of options. And you know what? It can feel that way. When it comes to a 401k, basically an insurance company is going to, provide you the various different health insurance programs that they've got. You got high deductible, low deductible. When it comes to a 401k, you've got almost seemingly endless options. You've got target date retirement funds. You've got index funds, ETFs, mutual funds, you name it, even maybe some company stock. And the first thing that I'm going to suggest is if you're starting at zero, you need to stay very focused on one thing, and that's the purpose or the focus of appreciation. And it really is hard. It's hard to beat the S&P 500. So if you had nothing else to invest in, I would say that would be a good starting place. And as the 401k develops and you get more money and you compound and you grow the money, then you can begin to branch out into other types of funds that maybe interest you. But for right now, I would say the S&P is a good place to start. Now, the second thing that you're asking about is contributing. And here's a very, I would say, routine distinction. Most employers are going to provide a match, and that match is, we're going to say, anywhere from 2%, maybe up to 5% or more. And I think it's important that we contribute as much of our paycheck as we possibly can, so as to get as much of the match as we possibly can. So in other words, if your employer is providing you a 5% match, that doesn't mean that they're going to pay you 5% regardless of what you put in. If you put in 2% of your paycheck, they're probably only going to match 2%. If you put in 5, they'll match 5. If you put in 10, they will still only match 5 because that's their maximum. And so, if you have to start small, do that. Whether it's 1% or 2% or 3%, whatever the case may be. But if you feel you can afford it, I encourage you to do as much as you can from your paycheck to be able to at least maximize the match. That's free money that the employer is providing you, and I think you don't want to say no to that. The third thing that I'm going to suggest is that unless you are an extremely high-paying job with that employer, I really encourage you, unless you need a lot of tax deferral, in other words, you need to be sheltering a lot of your paycheck into that 401k so that you pay less in tax. I'm going to encourage you to contribute most of what you contribute, if not all of it, into the Roth side of your 401k if your 401k has that provision. Now remember, the match is always going to go on the pre-tax side because your employer wants a tax deduction for doing that. So that's going to be on the pre-tax side. But I'm a very big advocate of the Roth side of the 401k if you have that capability. So take that into consideration. Number 2, oh my goodness, I'm already behind in time. We gotta hustle already. Mark from Cedar Rapids, he says, every time the stock market gets volatile like it has been lately, I feel a strong urge to sell everything and to move to cash to protect my savings. How should a long-term investor deal with these feelings and the inevitable dips in the market? Well, Mark, thank you for your question. I think it's a very basic human instinct to feel very emotionally attached to your money, number one. You've worked hard for it, and you don't want to see it lost. You don't want to see it disappear on you. And so that natural inclination to defend, to protect, to salvage and to save what you've made and what you've earned for winnings is kind of a natural thing. Now, I'm going to assume, and that's always a dangerous thing, but I'm going to assume that you're a do-it-yourselfer. And so one of the things that I might say is that, I, as a fiduciary and a financial advisor, I work with a tremendous number of do-it-yourselfers. And I think one of the things that has become very clear to me over the course of time is most of those do-it-yourselfers really appreciate that opportunity of being able to have someone in their corner that they can run things past, that they can have a second opinion on. And number 2, really realizing that do-it-yourselfers as human beings, because they do have that emotional connection to their money, they need to have potentially someone who is not emotionally attached to that money, providing them advice. And this is where I suggest a person always aligns themselves with an advisor, with a fiduciary, so that you can have someone who is not making emotional decisions about the money. Sometimes we have to make very difficult decisions, whether the market's up or the market is down. And those things can be, those decisions can be even harder if it's your own money that you're talking about. And so in this long term, certainly you have to have that long-term perspective, but you also need to be able to have that, maybe that sounding board, that voice of reason in your life. And so I would suggest make a relationship with a financial advisor who's open to working with do-it-yourselfers, even on a consultant level, to be able to provide you that, maybe that second opinion that could really save you from making a bad emotional decision. Hopefully that's helpful to you. Here's an interesting one. This is from David from Omaha. Man, across the border. That's impressive. David says, I've heard financial experts talk about the sequence of return risk, especially for those that are close to or in retirement. It sounds complicated and scary. Can you break down what this risk actually means and how I can protect my portfolio from a big crash right as I'm about to start withdrawing money? Absolutely. So the idea of the sequence of returns is that none of us can really determine with any degree of accuracy what the market is going to do next. We've never had that as a possibility. We're not Nostradamus. We can't see into the future. And yet we all kind of understand this concept that if you think about the first 3 years of a person's retirement, the direction that the stock market goes in the first 3 years after retirement really can make or break a retirement. In other words, a person who is retiring in the next 3 years after retirement, the market is going up. It's doing extremely well. Well, that person's going to have a very different outcome than, say, the person that retires and all of a sudden the market is simply going down for the next 3 years. You could have the same amount of money, you could be investing in the same types of things, but you're going to have two very different outcomes. And so the reality is that we have to be prudent enough to look ahead and to say, okay, how many years before I actually do get to retirement? And my thing has always been, if you're within 5 years of retirement, you need to start analyzing very seriously what you're investing in, how much risk you're taking on, and potentially consider reducing the risk and beginning to focus more so on an income-producing portfolio, something that now you're transitioning all the winnings that you have amassed and that you have appreciated, and you're turning it into investments now that are going to produce for you interest and dividends that you can spend for the rest of your retirement without touching the principal. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to give up growth. It doesn't mean that you have to stop investing in stocks. In fact, most of my clients have a good degree of money that is invested in stocks that pay dividends. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to give up those equities, but you're more prudent, you're more focused, you're more specifically looking for those things that are going to provide you the greatest amount of income, and they're going to do it on more of a contractual basis. And so that's the reason why we pay attention to the stage of life that we're in. It's also the reason why we've seen so many people run out of money, because they were still, they may have transitioned into a different stage of their life, their retirement stage, but they were still maintaining the accumulation type instruments and thinking that those were going to be the best for the stage that they now found themselves in. And unfortunately, that can be a very, very crucial mistake. Number 4, this comes from Jennifer in Ames. Jennifer says, I have a mortgage, I have some student loans, a car payment, but I also want to save for retirement. So we're going to assume that Jennifer's a little bit on the young side. And she says, which should take priority? Paying off my debts faster or putting more money into investment accounts? I'm not certain where to focus my limited extra cash flow. Great question, Jennifer. And here's the simple answer. I want you to start saving. I want you to start investing for the future. And yes, you can do both. I know it's difficult. I know it's hard. But you need to start saving now. And the reason being is time and interest on money. You see, the longer the runway that we have, the more years we have to invest, the less money we have to commit to the savings in order to be able to have the outcome that we want. Individual investors, I remember years ago I was teaching a college class. I can't remember if it was at North Iowa Community College or Iowa Lakes or wherever it was, but I asked this question. I said, when did you really get serious about investing? And I said, how about in your 20s? No one raised their hand. I said, how about your 30s? Maybe a couple raised their hands. And I said, how about your 40s? And almost the entire room raised their hands. And so what we know is that if we can begin the process of saving for retirement sooner, we don't have to save as much in order to be able to have the outcome that we want. So, Jennifer, I know it's difficult. I know it sounds good to pay off debts. It's probably what your parents are telling you, and that's not bad advice, but I want you to save. Sit tight. We'll be right back with some more questions from you and the mailbag. I'm Matthew Johnson. Sit tight. We'll be right back. And welcome back to the second half of the Capitalized Life and Retirement Show. I'm your host, Matthew Johnson, president and owner of Johnson Wealth and Income Management, a retirement income source located in Clear Lake and Humboldt, Iowa, serving clients in northern Iowa and southern Minnesota. Well, if you're just joining us, welcome to today's program. Today we're having a little bit of fun. It's the end of the year, and my staff has basically collated some questions that have been collected over the last few months from our website, johnsonwim.com. And the first 4 questions, great questions. Man, we got questions from Des Moines and Cedar Rapids and Omaha from across the border. We got one from Ames. Great questions so far. If you're ever interested in taking and asking a question, hoping that maybe it gets on the air, I encourage you, go to our website, johnsonwim.com. Not only can you submit questions for the radio show, but you can go back and watch previous YouTube recordings on various different topics. There's white papers, there's past radio shows that you can listen to, all sorts of information that is available for you for educational purposes. So let's get right back to it. Question number 5. Looks like this one comes from Chris in Iowa City. Chris says, this is interesting. He says, if you were given $1,000 today, with the one condition that you had to invest it in something non-traditional or fun. And then he puts in parentheses, no boring S&P 500 fund. Chris knows me, doesn't he? What would you put it into? Maybe a collectible, a specific new tech trend, or something completely out there? Man, that is difficult. Well, I'm going to probably show just how much of an old-fashioned fella I am. I have to say, one of the things that I so appreciate is I appreciate old mechanical things, old tractors, old cars, you name it. If it's old and it's mechanical, I'm fascinated with it. And though I can't say that I have one, I've always wanted one of those hit and miss engines. So if you gave me $1,000 and said, hey, do with it whatever you want. Number one, I think that kind of technology is so worth preserving in our society. Not only is it cool, not only do I think it was so ahead of its own time when it came out, and it was so useful and it was practical, but I just think it's worth preserving. And I don't know that those things really lose their value. So yeah, I could do a fractional share in art, and I could, invest in old classic Lego sets. I suppose I could do that, but there's just nothing like good old fashioned iron, in my opinion. So there you go. There you go. I hope that hope that satisfies your curiosity. Question number 6. This comes from Emily in Davenport. And she's put in parentheses, choosing between traditional versus Roth. This is going to be good, I'm sure. I have an option to contribute to either a traditional or a Roth IRA or a 401k plan. I'm in my prime earning years. How do I decide which one is right for me? And does it change if I expect my income to go up or down in retirement? Well, Emily, number one, I'm going to say that the answer here is very, very simple. If you're in your prime earning years, you want to be able to maximize how much of your paycheck you can save. And in this case, this might be deferring into the pre-tax side. It could be deferring into the tax-free side. But either which way, there will be no system that is able to accept more money than the 401k. The 401k right now allows us the opportunity of being able to contribute over $24,000 a year. Now, you say that you're in your prime earning years, and I don't know exactly how old you are, but even with the one big, beautiful bill that was just recently passed with the provisions of the tax code, if you happen to be in that perfect little age group of 60 to 63, I believe it is, at that point, you can contribute nearly $36,000 a year into a 401k. So, in all honesty, you could work with the IRA, and of course, there are benefits behind the IRA. You could work with the Roth, and that could be a useful tool. But I don't think that there's going to be anything, if you're in your prime earning age, that is going to be able to do nearly as much for you as the 401k. And so I really encourage you, if you've got that 401k, it's an opportunity for you to contribute. Even if you didn't get a match, it's still worth it because it's going to give you so much opportunity and room to be able to save and save quickly. You can put a ton of money into it. And if you invest properly for the stage of life that you're in and you pay attention to fees, I think you can really knock it out of the ballpark. Okay, but don't get scared when things go down, because remember, when things are declining, that's when we want to be the biggest buyers. We want to be able to buy on those dips, and we want to buy on the volatility. Almost finished. We have 2 questions left. We have number 7. This is from Robert from Sioux City. So I'm guessing Sioux City, Iowa. And here's his question. He said, I recently looked at the fees on some of my mutual funds, and they seemed higher than I expected. How much of a difference do these fees really make over 20 to 30 years? And what's a reasonable fee percentage to look for in a managed investment account? Perfect question. Well, Robert, number one, fees do matter, and they matter an awful lot. I'll give you, for instance, just today I was working with a couple that had started an investment portfolio with what was one of his high school friends who had become a financial advisor. Now, they worked with this guy for a few years. I think it was 4 or 5 years, something like that. And the friend has now moved on. And so now He's gone into a totally different career field. It's not as though he's just moved institutions. He's now doing something totally different. And they were looking for an advisor because they just didn't want to be a house account with this institution. And so when we were looking at the fees, what we noticed is not only the performance, but also the fees. And he was aggressively invested. And for 2025, he had a return of roughly about 8.5%. Now, when I looked at what was going on within his account, what I noticed is that not only was he paying 12B1 fees, which are like renewal commissions, and those were to the tune of around 1.25% to 1.5%, depending upon the actual mutual fund that he was in. But he was also contributing money, and that new money being contributed, going into those mutual funds, he was being charged a commission to buy the Class A shares. And so as a result, he was paying somewhere in the vicinity of around 5 to 5.5%. And I just kind of brought that to his attention, and I said, I just wonder, I can't help but wonder if you weren't paying such a large upfront fee, a commission, when contributing money into these various different mutual funds, if you wouldn't have a actual return closer to that of the S&P at around 16%. And so I have to tell you, Robert, you want to be able to look for the funds that are going to be lean and mean. And I think one of the best ways to be able to do that, if you're going to do this yourself or you're going to invest through, say, a 401k, is going to be focusing on the index funds. The index funds are going to be very, very low cost. Now, if you want a more hands-on approach where you have an advisor, you have a money manager, someone who is actually a fiduciary, providing you advice that's in your best interest, not that of the firm's, and they're managing your account, managing your positions for growth, for income, for one of those two things, or maybe a combination of each, then I want to say be very careful to anyone in any institution that's going to charge you more than 1%. You know, depending upon the institution, I've seen many institutions that have charged as much as 1.5%. And what I have found is oftentimes they will have a very aggressive portfolio, and you will be very, very risky, even if you're older, even if you're closer to retirement. And those institutions are charging you a 1.5% management fee, and they are keeping you very risky in order to justify that 1.5% management fee that they're charging. And I think that that's bupkis. So we need to be very careful of the various different fee structures that are out there. You want to know the business model of the financial advisor or institution that you're working with, and they need to be transparent. They need to be able to answer that question. That's one of the things that I actually volunteer and bring up to a person, because regardless of whether we're, say, in a variable annuity and we didn't realize that variable annuity could be charging us 3.5%, 4.5% in fees, or we're just getting soaked in commissions, one of the things that we have to realize is every dollar you pay to an institution, that is a dollar you don't get to keep. And we want to keep as many of our own dollars as is possible. So drum roll, please. Last question, question number 8 for the program. This one's going to come from Linda in Waterloo, and Linda has an estate planning basics question. She said, my husband and I have our investments pretty well organized, but we realized we haven't updated our wills or beneficiaries in years. What are the 3 most important steps we should take to make sure our money goes where we want it to go if something happens to us? Great question, Linda. Here's from the top very quickly. Number 1, first and foremost, forget about when you die. Let's pay attention to right here, right now. One of the things that I encourage every single individual and couple to get is a financial power of attorney. Don't bother worrying about the springing power of attorney. Get the immediate power of attorney. If something happens, car accident, whatever it is, heart attack, we want to be able to know that we can act on the behalf of our spouse, our loved one, immediately. And so that's the first thing that I want you to get. The second thing is that you need to take every single account that you have with every single institution. I don't care if it's a life insurance policy, an annuity, a CD, a brokerage account, and you need to call that institution. You need to identify who your beneficiaries are. You need to make certain that you know who those beneficiaries are, and if they're not who you want them to be, if it's not the percentages you want them to be, then you need to amend that, and you need to do it right away. Now, we also need to be thinking about the next generation. What happens if, God forbid, you were to lose a child? Well, if you would want that child's share to receive that child's share, if you were to pass away and they had already predeceased you, then we want to make certain that we're listing our children and putting something called per stirpes. It's a Latin term, something I've taught on numerous times, and it means to follow the bloodline. And so I encourage you, go through with a fine-tooth comb, make certain every dollar you possibly can find that has the ability of being directed towards a loved one gets that way. This way, when you die, we don't have money going into your estate, which ultimately is probated. We have money that is directed immediately out to a beneficiary. It's the best and the most effective and the most efficient way of handling money. Well, there you have it. It's a wrap. Another year is gone. Goodbye, 2025. Hello, 2026. And may you have the most, shall we say, prosperous 2026 ever. I'm Matthew Johnson. Thank you so much for listening and watching. And remember, it's up to you to make today a great day.